Yes.
How are you putting that one together?
Yeah. Gris by Dr. John is our next cold listen hot take. I feel like there should be a swoosh sound that comes in after
We gotta
that.
work
So
on our
Josh,
sound effects.
I'd love you to work on that so we could add some lo-fi hi-fi in this. But yeah, this is an interesting album. So I'm just going to go ahead and start the clock right now. And I think I'm going to start with Josh. Gris, Dr. John, initial thoughts.
Oh man, we're down in the Big Easy for this one, aren't we?
We sure are.
I love the Cajun sound, the Creole that he brings. You can tell he has lots of influences. You know, being from New Orleans, you got jazz, you've got blues, you've got I heard some like Latin, Mexican sound type of music as well. It all blends together, and it's got a real laid back, almost like spooky, out in the bayou type of sound to it, and I really enjoyed this album. I'm not too familiar with Dr. John's work. I have seen him live. I saw him at a festival in DC a while back now, probably like 5 years or so ago, and I was right up in front because it was one of the opening, like right at noon type of acts. And he brought it, and it was real fun, and I was glad to see him perform. So I just love the background singers on this as well. He doesn't always stand front and center on these tracks. He's got kind of some looping dialogue, and it's pretty instrumental at times as well. And then you've got all the backup singers and accompanying singers bringing their energy as well. You've got lots of instrumentation on this album, and it's unlike anything we've listened to. I'm really glad that we got to, you know, see this kind of niche. I'm not sure if it's a niche music or not, but it's definitely a different slice of this spectrum that we haven't explored before.
Yeah, it's like swamp blues meets psychedelic for those that are trying to get a feel for what the sound is like. We'll talk about the instrumentation, I think, a little bit later. But Matt, how about you? First impressions?
Yeah, I enjoyed this overall as well. I feel like this, you know, as much or maybe more so than any of the other cold listens that we've done, this is something I would like to listen to multiple times, because I feel like this is the type of album that deserves multiple listens to really, for me anyway, to fully appreciate what he's doing. But on one listen, it's certainly interesting. Josh is right. There's stuff from all over the place here. You know, he's throwing in, it is swampy, as you know, the swamp banjo kind of Cajun Creole is certainly there. You know, also I was hearing, and I don't know a whole lot about Tom Waits, but I'm hearing a lot of like, I'm sure Tom Waits had to be somewhat influenced by what Dr. John's doing here, because it's like junk rock too. There's lots of like clanging, you know, like not just like cowbells, but like garbage cans and stuff like, you know, somebody's in a junk. It's like, find something. It's like your second grade music class. It's like, find something and make sounds out of it, you know, but he's doing it in a way that, you know, that really kind of coheres together and makes really, you know, cool jazzy sounds. It's like, you know, the background vocals, Josh, it's almost like chanting, you know, like a lot of like chanting or like spiritual, like almost gospel type vocals that are happening here. You know, some of this I'm like, this is like a little bit of freeform jazz, because some of it's kind of all over the place, but you're getting, you know, clarinets, bassoons, you know, harpsichord, bongos, animal noises. It's like he's throwing everything in this thing, you know. And I love the last two songs in particular. I really, really liked. I think Jump Sturdy was a great little 2-minute, you know, song. Very interesting part with a cool like kind of banjo strumming in the background. And then I Walk on Gilded Splinters. That chorus was running through my head for a while. I was singing that. It's like, walk on gilded splinters, you know. And it's just got a great funky you know, rhythm to it. Yeah, like you're right, Josh. Spanish, like there's flamenco stuff in here. He's really doing everything. It's certainly not the type of stuff that I go to first when I'm looking at music, or looking to play stuff. But I would like to listen to this multiple times. And this is also I've seen him too. I think I saw him at Bonnaroo once doing like one of their Super Jam kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fun stuff. This is even more fun to listen to live, to kind of be there as like a happening almost. But very interesting stuff that he's doing here, and yes, very much unlike a lot of stuff that we listen to. John, would you consider this world music? I mean, I know we've talked about world music before, but
This is so I'm going to kind of do this in honor of Dr. John here. I'm going to do this as true hot takes, like little notes I made when listening to this album. The first thing I said is this could be at first I couldn't remember it, the soundtrack for True Blood. It sounds like it would be in the background of a show like that, because it really has almost like a supernatural vibe to it. In my opinion, it sounds like it would be playing over a mist on a swamp, and that was the first thing I thought of. And like Matt said, there's found sounds all over. There's clanging and off-blown trumpets and banjo, but not played in a tight way that you'd expect for Americana. It's like a loose gallopy banjo, I would say, that it's not really moored to anything. And that's why I'd say a lot of the music that's being played in this is not really moored to anything. It kind of goes in its own direction, and you can kind of extrapolate what you want from it. The second thing I'd say is, I know Matt mentioned, I hadn't thought of Tom Waits, but that's actually a really good thought. I immediately thought of jazz because there's elements of that. The other thing I thought of is how much more I liked this album than Astral Weeks, even though Dr. John is pretty much doing the same thing Van Morrison did. They both have that like babadadu, sound in their voice, but it in no way intrudes on it in this album in the way that I think we all had a visceral reaction to on Astral Weeks. And I think that's because it fits perfectly in the instrumentation here, whereas it was like jarring and like discordant, in the Van Morrison stuff. So that really stood out to me. I'm like, wow, he's kind of doing the same thing, but I enjoy it. And like you guys said, it wasn't just the last two songs. Jump Sturdy in particular got stuck in my head for like a week, but there were like 3 or 4 different songs that would bounce in my head.
Yeah, Mama Roo was one.
Yeah, Mama Roo, exactly. I Walk on Gilded Splinters with Matt said, and then there was parts of the music of Grease Grease Gumbo Ya Ya, which is funny to just say that, got stuck in my head as well. The musical parts of it, one thing that I love is these Rolling Stone Top 500 cold listen hot takes. I'm so glad that we're doing them because they're digging up other elements of the 60s, which I kind of got stuck a little bit on the 60s toward the end, but this is sort of reinvigorating like almost the underbelly and like the indie, like almost the equivalent of like indie rock or indie hip hop, but in the 60s. This is the stuff that kind of got overlooked or not talked about as much, and it's just really cool. And if you like the blues, if you like jazz, if you like, and it's also only 33 minutes, by the way, so it flies by.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to talk about even the songs that are 6 minutes and 7 minutes, they do not feel 6 minutes and 7 minutes. They breeze by. So yeah, if you're in any way into blues, interesting music, psychedelic rock, jazz, I mean, this is an album that is very versatile for you.
This is good psychedelic music. I feel like there should be like a smoke machine in the studio when they're recording this, because it's just so like all over the place. And I feel like obviously I don't know what his production style is, but I can imagine it's very like welcoming and like just, oh, you play this and you play this and like we'll bring in that and we'll just like jam out and stuff and see what happens.
It's like a beatnik. It's like, man, he's like calling people cats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the guy that like, this is who they modeled Dr. Teeth from the Muppets after. I mean, that's who they, that's who this guy is. But if you ever saw him live, he was wearing all this flamboyant like capes and rings and hats. He came out with a cane, he's like, yeah, you dig, man, like that's like Dr. John. But no, I totally like, I'm going to be interested because I know we're covering Tom Waits, and I know some of his stuff, but that's one of the first things that came to me. Because there is a lot of that, kind of like junk rock that Tom Waits was doing, and kind of like the beatnik kind of vocalizations. But this is very cool. I don't know. Dr. John was around. He's been around for forever. I mean, he's been doing all kinds. So I'm sure he's got a ton of albums. And again, I don't know if I'm going to go like deep diving into all of his albums, but this seems to be the one that was ranked highest on best ever albums as well. So it was in the 1968, it was ranked number 134 in the top in the 1960s, so it was kind of approaching top 100. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would listen to this multiple times.
Can I add another piece here as we hit the 5-minute mark left? I thought we talked about psychedelia, and I've mentioned multiple times I really liked that United States of America album, which was also psychedelic, but that very much felt like a scientific approach to psychedelic music. I feel like this is the other side of the coin, and I liked it just as much. This is like a soulful approach to psychedelic music. And I liked both of them because what both of those approaches did was they stripped a lot out of the self-importance of the psychedelia, whether it be sort of the more scientific approach the United States of America took or the more soulful, no pretensions approach that Dr. John took. And I think a lot of what, really, I think psychedelic music, sometimes I don't love about it, is it for music that's kind of designed to be, mind altering and, conscious driving, it took itself very seriously. And I think maybe that's what I like about certain types of psychedelia is when it goes in a direction where it's less self-conscious and more just about the sounds and the true experimentation. Yeah.
This also, you saying that reminded me a little of like Captain Beefheart too. He's kind of got that same type of let's throw it all on the wall and see what sticks type of attitude, at least from hearing this album. Which
I feel like his sessions would be a lot more fun to be a part of, though.
Oh,
yes, probably.
He wouldn't torture his guys
just
as
in
much.
terms of the incorporation of different music and influences.
See, it's interesting. Like there were a lot of words that was coming to mind when I was listening to this. Psychedelia was not one of them, and I'm not saying, but I understand what. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but like
the album cover where it said "The Night Tripper" didn't lead you in that direction.
No, not. I was listening to the music, John. But I also think that part of that is because my notion of like when I hear psychedelic, like I think of things like 13th Floor Elevators, like that sound, because that is what like over the years when I hear the term psychedelia, that's what I'm thinking of. But hearing you guys talk about it, I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm going, oh yeah, I didn't really think of that, but I see where that is going, and this is certainly much. I would much rather listen to this than because again I always talk about dated, and this doesn't. I wouldn't say this sounds dated, but it's its own thing. It's a unique thing, which makes it stand out. It's
because that New Orleans swamp still seems like a timeless thing. You know what I mean? They're still doing it in True Detective, a year ago. You know what I mean?
And that every whole, Mardi Gras you go to. For sure.
Well, the whole idea of that New Orleans swamp is that it is timeless. So that swamp blues is kind of timeless as a result. Too.
It's hard to see stuff like that and be like, nah. If you ever see a band playing this stuff in New Orleans, like on a street, and that 14-year-old kids blaring this stuff, it's like it's amazing,
This owes a lot to that New Orleans jazz sound, that Duke Ellington sound. It doesn't exactly go into it, but you can definitely see where being around that world, leads you to this syncretic type of music.
But I think that's a good thing that you're pointing out too, John. The differences, like I would say that if I'm thinking of the United States of America, it's like more artistic, right? And this is more. I don't want to say the United States of America wasn't genuine, but this just came more from your gut, like you said, more soulful, more just like let's just play what we feel. There's no it's just and see what happens, as opposed to let's manipulate the sounds and make this tweak this and do that. It's much more like you said, scientific and artistic.
Or it's organic, right?
Exactly.
And this is where the PhD we got in doing all these albums, I really think it's cool because we can do callbacks. And we never would have been able to do callbacks like this without having covered 100 albums and an additional 15.
I would have been like the Beatles never did anything like this.
This doesn't owe much to Bob Dylan, does it? So,
no, not really. No.
Well, I'll end with the cover is fantastic because it's, like I said, it says Dr. John the Night Tripper. And then there's a picture of him looking like a very high Mike Mills from REM would be how I would describe him on the cover.
And that's his website too. He did die in 2019, but
that's a shame.
His website is nighttripper.com.
Okay.
So
he stuck with him.
Yeah, he must have kept that nickname for his life.
Well, R.I.P. Dr. John. It sounds like you were playing music pretty much all the way up into the end.
And this was his debut album, so he kept the Night Tripper from start to finish. So
yep.
How about that? Well, we're just about at the end.